Hi everyone, this is a tutorial for the start of the Earth Prelude sweater. This is showing you how to do the cast on for this sweater, which is in two parts. Now the first part is quite straightforward. It's using the long tail cast on. You're casting on the stitches for the armhole. So you can make a slip knot if you want to, but personally I like to just use the slingshot method for the first stitch of the long tail cast on. And then in the pattern it will tell you how many stitches you're casting on using the long tail cast on to create the armhole of the sweater. Another thing to note is please read the pattern carefully. You do need a really long tail for this cast on because there are two parts to it. So you need more of a tail than you might expect if you were just casting on the armhole stitches alone. Okay, so you're starting with long tail cast on and casting on the number of stitches that it tells you in the pattern for the armhole of the sweater. Okay, so I've cast on the recommended number of stitches for the armhole to start with. You can see them on my needle here. The next thing that you're going to do is to join these stitches in the round. So in order to do that, you're going to need to use a magic loop. So I like to go to the end of the needle I've just cast on, and at that point pull the cable through until you reach the other needle. Bring those stitches to the end of your needle, and then before you join in the round you need to double check that you don't have a twist in your stitches. So I tend to look at that cast on edge. I want that cast on edge to be on the inside of this circle going all the way around, so just double check all the way around that you don't have a twist anywhere in those stitches. And then you're going to join in the round. And if you've worked one of my patterns before, it's the usual way that I join in the round, which is by slipping the first stitch from left needle to right needle. The second stitch on right needle comes over that last stitch and off the needle, and then return that stitch back to where it was before on the left needle. Then you pull on your tails to make sure it's nice and tight. Now this is the part that's then going to be a little bit different, because here we're now going to do the second part of the cast on. And for this part, what we're doing is bringing these two needles together and holding them together like this. Push these stitches a little way down your needles just to give you a little bit of space to work. And then from this point onwards, you're actually going to continue with another cast on. Here we're going to use Judy's magic cast on, and we're going to be casting on the side of the body down these two needles. And in the pattern it will tell you how many stitches to cast on. Importantly, this is where you choose how long the body of your sweater is going to be. So how many stitches you cast on these needles at this point is important in terms of deciding the final body length that you get. Okay, so Judy's magic cast on. I've got my tail end and I've got my yarn attached to the ball end. I'm holding both of those yarns in my fingers, and then I'm separating them with my thumb and first finger like this. And then what happens is the one yarn wraps around the outside of the opposite needle and through the middle. That's one stitch cast on. Then this yarn does the same thing. It wraps around the outside of the opposite needle and then down through the middle. And what you'll notice each time is that I'm using my thumb to kind of anchor the yarn. Once it's wrapped, grab it with your thumb. That makes it getting it through that middle space much easier. Grab it with your thumb, bring it through that middle space. So I've cast on 4 stitches in total, 2 stitches to each needle so far. You just keep going like that. So the yarn comes around the outside of the opposite needle, down through the middle, around the outside of the opposite needle, down through the middle. And you just keep working that until you've cast on the number of stitches that is required. And as I said before, if you read the pattern carefully, there are like 6 different options for how long you make your body. So it's up to you, depending on how many stitches that you cast on these needles. One thing is, if you get to a point where you're running out of space on your needles, you grab the end. I like to grab it, pinch it there to make sure that I don't lose the position of these 2 yarn ends, and just push your stitches down the needles like that, and then carry on working the cast on until you've got all the stitches that you need. Okay, and once you've got all the stitches that you need cast onto these 2 needles, the last thing to do is to just twist those yarn tails together, maybe about twice, and that just really helps to secure that final stitch. Make sure it doesn't slip off your needle, and then turn your cast on stitches so that you're now holding them in your left hand. Pull the bottom needle out from those cast on stitches, turn it, and then you're ready to start working. When you start working, double check that you are starting to work the first stitch with the yarn that's attached to the ball, not the end of the tail that's left from the cast on. And then you're ready to start knitting into the first stitch as normal. This is the start of row 1, which is a right side row.